What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is going to be another Q&A video with questions that were gathered from my TikTok community. So if you guys are not following me on TikTok, then you guys are missing out on your opportunity to ask questions in these videos. I highly recommend that you follow me there. You can find my TikTok in the description below. Won't waste too much time with the intro today because we have a lot of good questions to get into, so we'll just go ahead and get right into it. First question is from Super Samoan Blue, and he asks, how important are warm-up sets before working sets, and how do you properly warm up the muscle without exhausting your energy for the working sets? Perfect question to start off with here. So warm-up sets before your working sets are very, very important. That's how you're going to kind of get your body and the muscles in the groove for the movement that you are about to do. Pretty important to understand if you're going to be following a lower volume training approach like what I like to promote, that your working sets are very, very important. You only get so many of them, and you actually get less of them than what people who follow a higher volume program would get. And so the importance of each one of those working sets is extremely high. It's very important that you hit the performance that you need to hit in those sets in order to stimulate growth. So the warm-up sets are how you are going to prepare for that. As far as how I actually go about warming up without exhausting the muscle, it's actually pretty simple. So as my load gets heavier, my reps come down. Let me give you an example of this. Let's say that I'm going to do a hack squat and I'm going to do my working set on 5 plates per side. And let's say that if I take that 5 plate set to failure, I'm going to fail around 12 reps. What my warm-ups would look like is I would start with 1 plate per side and I would probably do 6 to 8 reps. And then I would go to 2 plates per side and I would do maybe 4 or 5 reps. I would go to 3 plates and I would do maybe 3 or 4. And then I would do 4 plates and I would do 1 or 2, and then I would work. So you see that as the weight goes up, the reps come down. And basically the entire purpose of the warm-up sets is to get comfortable for the working sets without wasting too much energy. And that's how I like to go about doing that. Really, my goal when I'm doing my warm-ups is to do as little reps as possible, as few reps as possible in the warm-up sets, and as little total work as I possibly can, while still getting ready and warmed up for the sets that really count. But you need to be careful about how you do that, because you can do too little warm-up work, which is just going to increase your injury risk unnecessarily. So there's a real fine line there between balancing doing too much or too little in your warm-ups, but I would venture to say that most people are definitely doing too much work in their warm-up sets, which is fatiguing them from their working sets. And so that's where I really like to recommend that increase load, decrease reps type of setup. Next question comes from Luis Gomez, and they ask, how would you go about reducing calories or overall process of coming from a bulking phase to convert to a cut? So Luis, this is really going to be something that's very context dependent. There is no one way to transition from a bulk to a cut. Actually, not to like plug my content too much, but if you go on my YouTube channel and you scroll back in my videos, I uploaded a lecture video covering this exact topic, converting from a bulk to a cut, and then I've also made one on a cut to a bulk, and that's really going to give you a lot of more detailed information than what I can give in this Q&A. But the long and short of it is that it really is going to depend on the situation. I would say most times people are finishing up their bulk. If they did a bulk properly, they're ready to diet. They've eaten enough food over the course of the bulk that they don't really have an appetite. They're ready to start losing weight, and they're ready to start getting leaner and getting some of that body fat off. So I typically like to start off the cut pretty aggressive. When the person has a lot of body fat left to lose, the body is a little bit easier at getting rid of that body fat, and so I like to take advantage of that. And I also like to take advantage of the fact that a decent amount of people are typically tired of eating by the time that they finish a bulk and are looking forward to the cut. And so I really use that as an opportunity to get really, really quick progress right out of the gate. I'm not going to give any set numbers because, again, it's personal, independent, depending on the individual. But really it's going to be a pretty aggressive calorie drop off the very beginning. Probably won't adjust cardio or expenditure too much, and then just kind of assess what happens from there, and then adjust as needed. But this is really one of those things where, like I've said a couple times now, you know, there's no set one way to go about it. It really is just going to depend on the situation and the context that you find yourself in at that time that you make that decision. This question comes from SDNS, bunch of other letters. Would you lower volume during a cut once you can no longer progress or once you start to regress? For example, would I lower my volume because I'm only matching reps rather than progressing? So yes, more often than not, I would reduce volume. That's something that I've talked about on my channels quite a bit. Is the goal of a cut is to obviously lose body fat, but the second goal of a cut is to maintain as much muscle mass as possible while you lose that body fat. And the way that you go about doing that is maintaining your gym performance, and specifically the amount of mechanical tension that you're placing within the muscle, which is by and large driven by the load on the bar. So basically you want to keep your strength. You want to keep your strength as close to what it was on the peak bulk, and then if you can also improve it while you're dieting, then that would be ideal. You're inevitably going to reach a point in your diet where you've lost enough weight and you've lost enough body fat that improving your strength is probably going to be a real challenge. And then at that point, it really comes down to maintaining it. But the way that you maintain, if not improve, your gym performance is by reducing your training volume and cutting back on the overall quantity of workload that you're doing and focusing on the quality of workload that you're doing. I need a little more context in this specific situation. I would say if you're only matching reps, that isn't really signs that you need to reduce your training volume. But if you do notice that you start to regress and go backwards, that is a definite sign that you need to do something. You either need to rest more, reduce your training volume. You need to fix the recovery flaw that you're dealing with at that time. But like I said, if you're matching your strength while you're dieting, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's more or less along the lines of the regressions where I would be more inclined to reduce overall training volume. Okay, next question comes from I'm Excellent, and they ask, what is the top 3 exercises for the traps? So a couple things to keep in mind here. Typically when we're talking about the traps, most people will be referring to the upper traps, which are up here by your neck. But I also think of the mid and lower traps, which are much more on your upper back. So if I had to pick 3 exercises to train my traps, I would probably pick a shrug, whatever way that I prefer to do that, typically a machine. I don't really like barbell or dumbbell shrugs a whole lot. I typically like machines. I would probably go with probably 2 upper back movements then, probably a vertical upper back movement and a horizontal upper back movement. So vertical probably be obviously some sort of pull down. I would probably do it on a machine, a good machine where the handles diverge and actually spread apart at the bottom to let me get a peak contraction. And then a horizontal rowing movement would probably be either a chest supported T-bar or like a chest supported hammer strength row. But those would probably be the main exercises that I would do for my traps. Next question is very similar, but also slightly different. This question is from Francisco Lanas. Hope I pronounced that right. What are my top 3 favorite back movements? So not just focused on the traps, but more so focused on just overall back. So I'm going to simplify this, and I'm going to pick 1 lat movement, 1 upper back movement, and then 1 spinal erector movement. So for my lat movement, I would pick some sort of a chest supported pull down, either the single arm cable pull down or the dual arm cable pull down that you see me guys use. For my upper back movement, I would probably pick a chest supported T-bar. I just think that really is probably the best bang for your buck exercise that you can get for your upper back. And then for my erectors, I would either go with a stiff-legged deadlift or a Romanian deadlift. or a hyperextension. I think all three of those are really, really good. You're probably going to get more bang for your buck out of a hinge compared to a hyperextension, but I do think that hyperextensions definitely have merit within a training program. There are some things that you can do in a hyperextension that you can't really do in a hinge, and ideally I would combine both of them, but if I had to pick one, I would probably pick the Romanian deadlift. Next question comes from Quentin Reynolds, and he asks, so you do the more important exercises first, but what if you just did an exercise with that same muscle? Should you do another in between for more rest? So basically what he's asking here is what I like to refer to as zigzagging exercises. Let's say you're doing a push session, and in a push session you're typically training chest, delts, and triceps. He's basically asking, do we do all the chest work and then all the delt work and then all the tricep work, or do we stagger it and zigzag it and go chest, delt, tricep, chest, delt, tricep? I prefer the latter. I prefer to stagger my exercises just to kind of give a certain area time for the local fatigue to clear off. So if I do like a flat chest press and then I go right into a fly, I feel like I could be stronger on that fly if I did an exercise in between them that didn't train my chest. But at the same time, I have structured my program doing things the first way, and I don't really think that there is one that's better than the other. I think in terms of hypertrophy, as long as you're progressing both of your lifts, if you have one person who is staggering their exercises and you have one person who's doing all chest, all tricep, all delt, and both of them are progressing their lifts and getting stronger in the gym, I don't think that one of them is better than the other. I think it really ultimately comes down to what you prefer. And then something that I also will structure my programs off of, just purely being honest, is how lazy I feel. And if I do a chest exercise and then I have to go all the way to the other side of the gym to do a tricep exercise and then come all the way back to the other side of the gym to do a chest exercise again, when I could just do the two chest exercises that are right next to each other and then go to the other side and do the tricep, I'll typically do that. So that's something that I don't really talk about a lot, but I will very often like program my exercise selection just based off of what's close to each other, so that I'm not walking around the gym and doing a bunch of unnecessary shit that way. But realistically, it's probably not that big of a deal. I think as long as you're progressing your lifts, that really is going to be the main thing that matters, and it really is going to come down to a personal preference, how you like to structure your sessions. And the final question of the day comes from Oscar Servine, who is actually a client of mine. Hope you're doing good, brother. And he asks, why is it that you're most likely to progress the first set of an exercise and not always the second set? So a couple things to think about here, and I have a couple different thought processes on this. So the first is that the first set of the exercise that you're doing, you're still relatively fresh. Even if that muscle isn't fresh, you're still fresh within that movement pattern. So let's say you're doing a vertical lat movement and then you move into a horizontal lat movement. Even though your lats aren't technically fresh on the horizontal lat movement because you just did a lat movement before, I do feel that moving into a different plane of motion, going from vertical to horizontal, does kind of change the resistance and feel within the muscles, so to say. And so in my eyes, I find that the first set that I do on a new exercise is always going to be more assertive than the one that follows it, just because in the second set I have some local fatigue in that area. I have some local fatigue in my biceps or my lats or whatever it is. The second is that I think it really is going to come down to structuring rep ranges and then matching those rep ranges with the resistance profile of an exercise. So sometimes I like to do my heavier set first and then do a lighter set. Sometimes I like to do my lighter set first and then do a heavier set second. And one of the things that I find helps kind of rejig some progression is to kind of flip-flop those. So if I've been doing my heavier first and then I move to my light, I may flip around and do my light first and then do my heavy. And I may find that just that switch right there may kind of re-spark some progression. Maybe doing the lighter rep range first fits the exercise better. There are a couple things that you could keep in mind here, but I think it really is going to be a matter of just experimenting with the set order that you do and seeing if you can find one that gives you consistent progression. But that is also going to potentially be another indicator that some of those exercises you may only need one set for. If you can really only get one quality set out of that exercise, and then that second one, you really can't progress that over time, no matter how you structure it, whether you go heavy, light, light, heavy, light, light, heavy, heavy, you know, however you set it up. If you find after weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months that that second set is just not being able to be progressed and it's not as good quality, I would just drop it. I wouldn't continue to do less quality work when you could reduce the total overall quantity and then improve the quality within that one set. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to everybody who contributed questions for this week's Q&A. Again, if you would like to contribute questions, please follow me on TikTok. Not only do I have some pretty good content that goes out over there, I also like to interact with my community pretty frequently, and I like to get you guys involved with videos like this. So if you want to get involved, then that's how you can go about doing that. As always guys, take care of yourselves and have a good one.